Hello and welcome to episode 24 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. I'm your host, Rick Doherty. Since we're a few weeks into the summer, Sarah from Seattle and I will be discussing an important topic today. We'll talk about the best ways to escape the heat and sometimes the rain in Walt Disney World. At this time of year, it can really be the difference between a magical vacation and a cranky day. Later in the show, I will be doing a unique dining review. I'm going to highlight a few food items I picked up recently at the parks while all by myself. Before we get started, please like, subscribe, comment, and share this show with your friends. Of course, the best way to help the show is to book your next vacation through me. I'm an authorized Disney travel planner with Ear to There Travel. I focus on Walt Disney World, Disneyland, Disney Cruise Line, Universal Orlando Resort, and Universal Hollywood. But I can help you with your next vacation almost anywhere in the world. My services are always 100% free to you. You keep as much or as little control of the planning as you want. Please contact me at rick@eartotheretravel.com, rick@eartotheretravel.com, or give me a call, 727-507-3123, 727-507-3123. There's a lot to be looking forward to on the show in the next few weeks and months. This episode officially hits the internet on Thursday, July 15th, which is the first day of Epcot's Food and Wine Festival. I am at Food and Wine and will bring you all of my initial reactions on Tall Guy Talks Travel on Thursday, July 22nd. The following week, Marissa from Chicago and I will continue our conversation about all of the things returning to Walt Disney World and some new things as well. Of course, Sarah from Seattle and I will also be heading to Disneyland next month. We have reservations for Blue Bayou, Lamplight Lounge, and Oga's Cantina. You know we will be bringing you plenty of dining reviews and complete episodes about that trip. Now let's get started on today's topic. We're going to welcome my great friend, Sarah, back to the show. How are you doing today, Sarah?
I am doing great. How are you doing?
Anytime I have Sarah from Seattle on the show, I am doing very, very well. I was just saying to somebody the other day that all my episodes with Sarah are so good. And then that person said to me, well, you know why? And I'm like, no, why? It's because she laughs at everything you say. And I'm like, you're right. She does laugh at everything I say, and that is one of the reasons that I love having her on the show. So thank you so much for being here. Today we are going to talk about a very important topic for this time of the year. It is July. It is incredibly hot at Walt Disney World, and we are going to talk about ways to beat the heat at all four Walt Disney World theme parks. As usual, we're going to start in chronological order of opening date, and we are going to go to Magic Kingdom. So I'm looking for one tip to beating the heat at Magic Kingdom, Sarah.
Yes, at Magic Kingdom, I know it's a long walk through the heat to get there, but I would have to probably say the Haunted Mansion is my favorite way to beat the heat in the Magic Kingdom. It's cool in there because of all the ghosts, and if you have a fast pass, you don't have to wait in the outside line area. So that's pretty nice.
Yeah, I think the only reason that wouldn't be a beat the heat trick for me is because you definitely do have to, like right now without Fast Pass,
right?
You have to wait outside for it, but it is covered. It is right along the rivers of America as well, so it's not as hot as other outdoor locations throughout the park. And it definitely is nice when that air conditioning hits you.
Yes, it is.
When talking about beating the heat, we also have to sort of consider that 2 in the afternoon rainstorm that seems to be inevitable this time of year at Walt Disney World. It's sort of similar. So I'm going to go with Carousel of Progress.
Oh, that's a good one. I didn't even think about that one.
Carousel of Progress is something that I basically keep like in my back pocket. So if I'm waiting for the People Mover, or if I'm just walking to the next attraction, maybe if you have kids and you're thinking about doing the Speedway, and then all of a sudden that rainstorm hits, or all of a sudden you just can't take the heat anymore. You can just shoot right over there. It's in your back pocket. It's that option. It usually never has a line. You can usually get into the next showing. And even if it's raining, you're covered while you're waiting for that next showing. So I think that is a very good beat the heat experience at Magic Kingdom.
Pirates, I think, is a good one too, in my opinion. It's not as air conditioned as Haunted Mansion, but the line goes through the inside and it's a long ride. So you get a lot of time to sit down and relax and kind of cool down a little bit. So I think Pirates is another good one.
That is actually a really, really good answer, especially now that they have reduced the social distancing in the queues, because recently that line had been stretching out into Adventureland, and Adventureland is very hot.
Yes.
At Magic Kingdom. But now, if it's a 45-minute wait, usually something like that, it's still mostly indoors, and you get hit by that smell of the water, which even if it's not that cold in that area, just smelling the water and feeling that refreshing vibe does bring down your temperature a little bit. I think that's a very, very good answer.
Anything with water that you don't have to wait outside, I'm there. Unless I'm getting splashed, and then I'm not.
This option is not available right now, but it will be returning hopefully at some point fairly soon. Upstairs at Columbia Harbor House.
Oh.
The quick service location in Liberty Square. This is kind of a twofer with Sarah's advice. A really, really good way to beat the heat at like that 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon time when it's really at its hottest is to mobile order your food, get your food fairly quickly from Columbia Harbor House, try to get a table upstairs, and you can look out the window at the queue for Haunted Mansion. While you're eating, if you see that queue get kind of short, you can quickly bolt out and then get into the air conditioning fairly quickly. So you're getting two experiences that aren't that hot back to back.
That's very true. I didn't think about that. I've never sat upstairs at Columbia Harbor House. We've only ever been to the downstairs area.
There's such a sensory overload at Walt Disney World, and you're really going to experience this when the next time you go is going to be your kids' first time there.
Yes.
That to just sort of get out of all the hustle and bustle and just go upstairs and have that reset moment. It's good for a lot of reasons, but definitely beating the heat or beating the rain is one of them. And having mobile order for quick service locations, it makes it a lot easier because you're not running into that place right when it starts raining, or you're not stuck in a line that's going out the door into the heat. So I do think that mobile ordering really, really helps you there. If you can think ahead a little bit, if you see the clouds coming, or if you can tell we're not going to be able to make it much longer, mobile order, you'll get your time and then head upstairs and you get to sort of unwind, relax, and that is a big thing. Now heading over to the second park, opened on October 1st, 1982, as we're continuing chronological order, and going to Epcot, which can be a park that does wear on you.
Especially when it's hot.
It's not as hot as some of the other parks, but it doesn't have a lot of covering, and you do end up walking a lot at Epcot. If you want to go from the back of World Showcase and go ride a ride in Future World, you're going to be walking like a mile.
Oh, totally.
And at different parts of World Showcase, you basically have to walk around the entire thing to get to other experiences. So you definitely need those places in Epcot where you can kind of unwind, get some air conditioning. What's one of your favorite cool down tricks at Epcot?
Any of the kind of boat rides. So we have Living with the Land or the Grand Fiesta Tour where you get to sit and kind of go through the water. Those definitely are on my list. I think the one that I'm most likely to go to cool down though would be Spaceship Earth.
Spaceship Earth is a nice long ride. It is a great ride, so I totally understand that. The only thing about that one is that the queue is outdoors.
True. It's usually been walk on when we've been there.
With Living with the Land, the queue is inside. So that is a really, really good option. As a matter of fact, the Land Pavilion would be a good place to go about 2-ish in the afternoon. There's a quick service dining location there, so if you wanted to get a little snack, Living with the Land has a completely indoor queue, and it is a water ride. So once again, you do get that cool off experience of a water ride. And then you could stay inside and get in line for Soarin'.
That's true. I didn't think of that because it is all like compact right there and that. So yeah, no, that the whole land pavilion, just stay there when it's hot.
Or you could do what we did recently and get a Garden Grill reservation and stay there for like 2 hours.
That's a good idea too. I like that.
The Grand Fiesta Tour in the Mexico Pavilion is a really, really good suggestion as well because it is inside the pyramid. It's very air conditioned in there, like almost too air conditioned at some times. And it's a boat ride that is refreshing. The only issue right now is that sometimes there is a line to just get into the pavilion, and that is outside. So
yeah,
it's not always outside anymore, so you might want to just keep an eye on it, but it definitely is a great way to get out of the heat. I have a couple suggestions at Epcot that even people I know, our fellow Disney Twitter people who go all the time, some of them they haven't even experienced.
Oh.
And I think they're things that you do have to experience if you are a Walt Disney World regular. One of them is the show at the American Adventure.
That's a good one. I'm not gonna lie, I skip the American Adventure quite frequently. I live here, I know, but I didn't even think of that. That's a good one.
The show is like a half hour. You wait for it in the pavilion. A lot of times now, right now, this isn't the case, but they would have the Voices of Liberty singing in the pavilion, and they usually tried to sync it up so that while you were waiting for the show, you could see the Voices of Liberty. There are little exhibits in there while you're waiting. You can make this a 45-minute to an hour experience to see this show. It's a good show. The animatronics are incredible. If you're just a Disney fan who loves the mechanics of some of these shows, is it a little overtly pro-American? Yes. I definitely think it is a really, really good show you have to experience, but obviously take it with a grain of salt. There are points that feel a little bit cheesy, like third grade history class, but it's really, really good. And the air conditioning is cranked up like Spinal Tap to 11. Then I'm also going to talk about my absolute favorite experience at Epcot, at the France Pavilion. This is not running during the day anymore because they have the Beauty and the Beast sing-along, which, on a side note, the Beauty and the Beast sing-along is hot garbage. I'm sorry, but it is one of my least favorite attractions in all of Walt Disney World. I did it once, and I will never do it again. We've talked about my fear of drops and how I hate drops.
Right.
If the next time you were down at Walt Disney World, we were hanging out in Epcot, and you were like, we could either do the Beauty and the Beast sing-along or hop over to Hollywood Studios and do Tower of Terror, I would be like, Tower of Terror.
Okay, then that's got to be really bad. It's got to be really bad. But is it good for little kids? Or are they going to say the same?
So I hear what you're saying, and probably it is good for little kids because you do get to sing the songs.
Okay.
From Beauty and the Beast, but they put in a different story. I just think it's really, really cheesy. They changed the story in a way that doesn't really make sense. It's just, I didn't want to get on a side tangent about the Beauty and the Beast sing-along, but a few hours before the park closes, they switch over to Impressions de France. And this movie is so good. It is.
I've never seen it. Oh, I've never seen it.
All right, Sarah, this is now your assignment. We have to start planning your next Walt Disney World vacation because had you told me you had never done Impressions de France, I would have just literally gone to Seattle and grabbed you and brought you here. I love this movie so much. I do love France. I'm interested in its history. It obviously has such a unique history and a unique people. It's so well done. If you're a fan of how movies are made and just the visual storytelling of movies, it just has that feel where it tells this brilliant story in a very air-conditioned theater.
Nice.
And it's
Nice.
very, very relaxing. It's not anything too intense. It's not really like the China Pavilion movie or the Canada Pavilion movie where there's a lot going on. It's just really, really well done. I don't think I'm overselling it, but it is really, really great. Check it out the next time you are at Epcot. Well, I know you're going to check it out the next time you're at Epcot because I'm going to go and make sure you do it.
I'm going to get kidnapped and be like, you are watching Impressions de France.
So that is one that you definitely have to try out. Now we're going to go over to a park that can get very, very hot. Not as hot as the last park we'll discuss, but certain areas of Hollywood Studios, namely Toy Story Land, can get really, really bad during the day. So my first tip in beating the heat at Hollywood Studios, when you get there, the first ride you go to ride should be Slinky Dog Dash.
Okay.
Slinky Dog Dash has an outdoor queue, and it always has an incredibly long line. You do not want to be stuck in that line at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You want to get into this line right when you get to the park. You are just at your hotel. You are just in your car's air conditioning. However you're getting to the park, you're not hot yet. Get on and off Slinky Dog Dash before the sun gets really high in the sky and Toy Story Land gets really, really hot. You will thank me. Most of the other queues are at least partially inside at Hollywood Studios. That one is not at all. So my first tip is not what to do, it's when to do it. Do you have any suggestions for beating the heat at Disney's Hollywood Studios, Sarah?
I do. And it's my place that we go not only when it's incredibly hot, but when it is incredibly rainy. And that is Toy Story Midway Mania because you get to wait inside.
You know, like I was just saying, Toy Story Land gets really, really hot. The one respite from that heat is the queue for Toy Story Mania, which is almost entirely indoors. As they have reduced the size of social distancing, I'm sure that most days you're going to be completely and totally inside when you're getting into this queue. At the very, very beginning, with 6 feet of distance and everything, it did stretch out a little bit, but now it's kind of making its way to being almost completely inside, and it is air conditioned. The queue is fun. There's a lot to look at in the queue, so even if it is a longer wait, you're still going to be entertained. The Mr. Potato Head.
Oh, the Barker Potato Head that is interactive with you and it talks. I love how it's set up like the floor of a child's room that's just full of stuff. Because I remember my mom and her best friend and I went, and that's where we went because it was pouring down rain. And we spent probably an hour and a half in line, and it didn't feel like anything because you're like, oh my gosh, look at that. Oh my gosh, look at that. And then you get to Barker Potato Head, and yeah, it's super fun.
Although I'm sure your child's room doesn't look like that. Like, your kid picks up after himself all the time, and it's always clean.
Totally, especially his playroom. Oh, it's pristine.
Another experience at Disney's Hollywood Studios that is a great way to beat the heat, but also something that not enough people do when they are at Hollywood Studios, is One Man's Dream at Walt Disney Presents. First, you are greeted by basically what amounts to a museum.
Mm-hmm.
It has different things throughout Walt's life. There's a desk that I believe he sat in school, or it's a replica of a desk that he sat in school in Missouri. But there are even things that relate to the parks and to the movies. They have the original way they shot movies like Snow White to make it look like there was depth on these 2D images, and they show you how they did that. It's some great technological advancements that now obviously are outdated, but when you see all the work they went into to making Snow White look the way it looks, that's incredible. They have an original animatronic from Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln, and you can see some of the inside workings of this animatronic. They have some of the original models that they used to make Main Street USA at Disneyland, what was then Paradise Pier at Disney's California Adventure, some of the castles. They have original models for planning Galaxy's Edge. All of that stuff is there. All of it is really cool to see. Then they might have some props from something newer, right as you're getting ready to get into the movie theater. And then One Man's Dream is a movie about Walt Disney and talks about his dream that resulted in something that all of us love. Now, sometimes they don't show the One Man's Dream movie. They show like 10 minutes of a newer movie in that theater instead. But that's actually also fun sometimes. Maybe you want to see, do I really want to pay the extra $30 to get this on Disney Plus? Well, maybe I'll watch 10 minutes of it in the theater.
That's fair.
I have definitely done that a few times. Spoiler alert, I always spent the $30, but but the movie might not be there every time you're there. But if it is, I do think that it is a great way to sort of get out of the heat and reflect on all the planning that went into this company that produced things that we all really, really love. So check out One Man's Dream. Do you have any other ideas for beating the heat at Hollywood studios?
I know it's not a popular option, but Muppet Vision 3D is one that I very much enjoy. And you get to wait in that cool little like space, and then you get to go and you get to sit and you get to have a fun time with the Muppets. I think that's a good way to beat the heat.
I don't know what makes you think that's not a popular option. Are you not on Twitter and seeing how much people love the Muppets?
But they are, but I feel like there are only a few people that show up because like I was complaining about on Twitter a while back that my timeline suddenly just decided I'm going to show you 3 people and that's it. But I feel like so many people, they're like, I love the Muppets, but nobody's ever talking about Muppet Vision 3D unless they're there and they're in like taking pictures of all the stuff and they're like, yay, but I never heard them go, I am going and I am going to go to Muppet Vision 3D. So
this is a little bit of a side tangent, but I've worked in radio for most of my life, and for a while I was working in sports radio in Philadelphia. And one of the bosses said that he thought there were 20,000 Flyers fans in Philadelphia, and they were just the 20,000 people that went to every game. That hockey wasn't as big in Philadelphia as it seemed like because they would always sell out the games and things like that. And I sort of feel like the Muppets are kind of like that because they have this small minority of people who are really, really loud about how much they love the Muppets, but then Muppet Vision 3D has a 20-minute wait.
Yeah.
But this is a great option, Sarah, and I'm glad you said it because this was the last thing Jim Henson worked on before he passed. So all of those voices for the characters Jim Henson voiced, it is the last time Jim Henson ever voiced them.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea. I did not know that.
But I do hear what you're saying, where it feels like it doesn't always have a huge weight and it's not the most popular thing at Disney's Hollywood studios, especially with all the new things that have come just over the past few years.
Yeah, I mean, I still love it. I go to it. I love Sweetums in it. The Muppets are just classic. I mean, who doesn't still watch occasionally the Muppet movie from forever ago? And I mean, I grew up on that. And so when I see things like this, it's like nostalgia for me of like, oh, this is so fun. And it's still cute and it's still entertaining. And I bet my son will love it. So.
And on another side note, when people ask the question, if you could remake any movie with one live actor and every other part is played by Muppets, what would you pick? There is only one correct answer to that question, and it is Major League, and Charlie Sheen plays Ricky Vaughn, and everybody else is a Muppet. You can't tell me you wouldn't pay $40 to see that movie.
I'd totally pay to see that movie. That'd be great. Oh, I love that movie.
So now back to Disney's Hollywood Studios. I'm just going to add one more thing that's right by Muppet Vision 3D, and that's Baseline Tap House. We've discussed this before. I don't drink alcohol, but I still really love Baseline Tap House. You can get a great pretzel there. If you drink beer, they have a bunch of great options there. It has one of those local feels while still being a Disney thing. It brings Disney quality to something that doesn't necessarily feel Disney, if that even makes sense. I really think Baseline Tap House is a great way to beat the heat. You can get their clear cherry soda that is non-alcoholic. It will refresh you. Definitely check it out. Sometimes it can develop a line, but you can also catch it at different points of the day where you can just walk right in and get something. I definitely recommend that. And since we're now leaving Disney's Hollywood Studios talking about ways to beat the heat, we are saving the best for last because Disney's Animal Kingdom is about 3,000 miles closer to the sun than Mercury. It gets really, really hot at Animal Kingdom, and you have to do a lot of walking at Animal Kingdom. So beating the heat here is super, super important. The trees are great. They're beautiful, but they trap in the humidity. And you're doing walking trails to see animals. You have to run from one ride to the other. It definitely gets really, really hot. So what are some of the ways that your family beats the heat at Disney's Animal Kingdom?
We go in the morning. That's a big one. But I think this is the one I've had the hardest time thinking about what we did to BT, because last time we were there, it was hot, and it was like I remember getting ice cream, I remember everything, but the way that all the ground is, it's just everything is hot there, especially Dinoland USA. Like I don't know if that just attracts more heat, but one thing that I thought of is I don't know if it's still there or not, but the train that goes up to the conservation area, we went up that way one time when we were there in the afternoon, and it has that whole indoor space where, like I said, I don't know if it's like this now, but they had like a bunch of different stuff you could look at inside. Like there was a veterinary area where they would bring in animals that occasionally you could kind of see what was going on. And even if it wasn't, you could still see all the stuff that they had in there. So that is one area that I would recommend if they still have all that stuff, because the train ride too is nice because you get a little breeze going. And so that's, I think, the one thing that I could think of where I don't remember, because I don't, like I've said in other shows, I do not like water rides, so I'm not going to go on the rapids. But I think that would be my first option.
That is a great answer for a couple of reasons. One, yes, they do still have the veterinary areas there. That is air conditioned. It is a little bit cooler when you are on the train and you are going up there. But also, they have added the animation experience to that building. The animation experience is one of the greatest, most underrated attractions at Walt Disney World. If you listen to Marissa from Chicago and I talk about over and underrated Walt Disney World, we talk about this attraction. You get taught how to draw a character at Animal Kingdom. It's usually always an animal character by a Disney animator. And you will be surprised how good yours ends up looking. You would be surprised the talent that you actually possess if you have the right teacher. Kids love this. Kids love to make fun of their parents because their parents isn't as good as theirs. Whatever the case may be, this is a great experience. It is indoors. It takes, I believe, I want to say about a half hour to do it. So it takes a good point of your day. The only issue, because we've talked a little bit about rain in this as well, is to get the train back, which is the only way to get back to the rest of Animal Kingdom. Sometimes there can be a line to get back over to the main part of the park, and if it rains while you're waiting in that line, you're out there.
At least you'll be cool if it's hot.
But you know as well as I do that a Florida rain doesn't necessarily cool down everything.
It's true. That is very, very true. Being from Seattle and have been caught in a lot of rain, every time I've gone to Disney World, we've gotten like a torrential downpour at least one day. And, you still got to find somewhere to take cover because it's true. You just still muggy.
There are a couple other options that I would say at Disney's Animal Kingdom for beating the heat. One of them is to mobile order from Satuli Canteen. It's just probably the best quick service restaurant on property, so take the opportunity to do that. Obviously, if you can get a dining reservation at Tiffin's, get a dining reservation for Tiffin's. I would suggest trying to make it for about 3 o'clock in the afternoon because, first of all, that is a time that's easier to get than other times because people either want to eat around noon for lunch or eat around 5 o'clock for dinner. But a lot of people aren't thinking about that 3 o'clock time, but that's when it's the hottest. So you go into this beautiful restaurant, eat some amazing food. It's a little pricier, so keep that in mind. And Nomad Lounge is attached to it too, so you could just chill out a little bit on Nomad Lounge, both literally and figuratively. And that is a great option as well. But definitely, Disney's Animal Kingdom gets really, really hot. You gotta find those options. I definitely agree with what you said about going earlier in the day. On most days, Disney's Animal Kingdom is the earliest park to open in the morning. Get there right when it opens. A lot of people will say to rope drop Flight of Passage. I disagree. I say rope drop Kilimanjaro Safari.
Yes.
Because the animals are more active because it's not as hot. But that also means that you're not as hot while riding it.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
And then later in the day, go to Pandora. Wait in line for Flight of Passage. A lot of that queue is indoors. Even what's not indoors is in a place that has a lot of waterfalls and is not as hot as waiting in line at Kilimanjaro Safari or Expedition Everest in the outdoor part. In the indoor part of Expedition Everest, it does get nice and cool. So those are just some tips for beating the heat at Walt Disney World. July can be a killer. August can be a killer. Even the early parts of September can still be really, really hot. So everybody just remember some other tips. Water. Make sure you're hydrating yourself. Yes, drink around the world at Epcot if you want, but make sure that you're hitting some water in between. I know we all spend a lot on our Walt Disney World vacations, and you feel like you have to cram something into every minute. But just take the time, sit down, relax, make sure that you are able to do this because it gets hot.
And if you're staying on property or even not, what my family does is in between, if you're doing a 2-park day, go back to your hotel and go swimming. Like there are some really cool pools on property, and people want to cram, like Rick was just saying, everything into as much space as they can. But so you could go back midday when it's super hot and you could have an almost empty pool because everyone's at the parks. And so you can cool down and refresh and be ready to go in the evening when everybody's having dinner.
So thank you once again for joining me, Sarah from Seattle, also known as @SarahSays84 on Twitter. Always love having you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I always love being here.
This is Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. To end today's episode, I will be doing some dining reviews of different items I have tried recently at Walt Disney World. Make sure to follow me on social media for blogs, pictures, videos, and live streams from the parks. Facebook.com/ear-to-there-Rick, Twitter.com/Rick_ear, Instagram.com/RickEar2there, and the podcast Twitter page, Twitter.com/TGTT podcast. For a free, no-obligation quote on a Walt Disney World, Disneyland, or Universal Orlando resort vacation, email me at rick@eartotheretravel.com, rick@eartotheretravel.com, or call 727-507-3123, 727-507-3123. My services are always 100% free to you. The first food item I'm going to review today comes from a trip earlier this month at Disney's Hollywood Studios. Rosie's All-American Cafe on Sunset Boulevard offers a plant-based lobster roll for $10.49. As a vegetarian, I love to try these vegan options. This is a refreshing dish containing marinated hearts of palm, celery, sweet apples, and creamy Old Bay dressing, served with house-made crispy potato chips. When I got it, the chips were the first thing that I tried. They were salt and vinegar. The chips were actually really good, and they complemented the sandwich very well. The lobster roll itself was unique. The seasoning definitely reminded me of something that would fit with seafood, but the hearts of palm did not taste like lobster. This is a plant-based option that is tasty but does not replicate the flavor of what it is trying to replicate. Still, I would recommend this item for somebody looking for a light, refreshing meal on a hot day at Hollywood Studios, and we all know Hollywood Studios can get really, really hot. Next, we're going to head to Tony's Town Square on Main Street, USA in Magic Kingdom. I'm often able to find seating available here by adding myself to the walk-up list on My Disney Experience. A lot of people speak poorly of Tony's, but my experience was actually fantastic. I was seated on the outside porch right along Main Street. I actually had a great view for one of the princess character cavalcades. My server was Kimberly from Smithtown, New York. She was excellent. She brought me an extra bread, and she refilled my Coke Zero, even though I never had to ask. On a side note, anytime you have particularly good service, whether it be in a restaurant or anywhere around the parks, always drop a hashtag cast compliment on Twitter. Disney definitely pays attention to that, and it can really help these cast members know that they're being appreciated. I got the spaghetti and Impossible Meatballs plant-based option for $22. It was honestly the perfect portion for a park day. Impossible is always good if cooked properly, and it doesn't taste like a lot of filler like some of the vegan options. I will definitely go back to Tony's Town Square again in the near future. It gets a bad reputation. I find it doesn't deserve it. The final meal I will be discussing came back in June and was also at Magic Kingdom. Pecos Bill Tall Tale Inn and Cafe in Frontierland is a solid but not spectacular quick service location. I ordered the veggie rice bowl for $9.99. It contains yellow rice, grilled peppers, onions, black beans, lettuce, tomato, and salsa. This is the only plant-based option right now at Pecos Bill, which is a little bit of a shame. They had a plant-based Southwestern cheeseburger before the closure, and that was really, really good. I also added the churro with chocolate dipper dessert for $5.89. My hack was to order the kids' mac and cheese for $6.69. That comes with 2 sides and a drink. I got the Cuties oranges as my sides, and that's always a nice little snack to throw into your park bag to use later in the day. The veggie bowl is surprisingly hearty, especially when combined with the mac and cheese. For quick service, nothing tasted old or reheated. The onions and peppers were grilled well, and the cheese on the mac and cheese was very creamy. As for the churros, I feel Walt Disney World churros are fool's gold compared to Disneyland churros. They're good, but I'm never as happy as I would expect. Magic Kingdom is, in my opinion, the worst food park at Walt Disney World. Pecos Bill can sometimes be the best option to not spend too much money on a disappointing meal. This has been episode 24 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. A new episode will debut next Thursday. Talk to you then. Have a great week.